Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined as always by the man Justin Perri. You can follow him on X at JustinPerri8. Shot Quality Bets and Hoops HQ is where you can find his excellent college hoops handicaps. As we inch closer to Champ Week, Justin, we still have some mid-major conference tournaments this weekend, including Arch Madness. I'll be sweating out my UNI ticket. You have some long shots to sweat as well, but the last regular season weekend for some of these big high major matchups.
Oh yeah, it is a great weekend because you have the best of both worlds. You get to try to figure out which Power 5 teams are really playing, and you have to try to figure out which low major teams are actually going to win. It is one of the most fun challenges, but I think one of the most beatable weeks in college basketball here before we get into March Madness, which is also pretty solid. I've had a historically decent success rate in March Madness. It's what's brought me here, I think. But no, I got what I wanted last night, which is that Milwaukee loss in the horizon early on, which opens up the pathway for Youngstown to get it done, who I have 6.5 to 1. So that's exciting. And then a couple different spots in Arch Madness as well. So I'll be watching closely today. Went a little bit against Drake because it was a heavy price, but we got a great weekend coming up. These Power 5 games, SEC games, I expect teams to play, to the fullest, trying to get things done, trying to shore up seedings. I think that's a little bit of a difficulty to fully handicap. There might be a few spots where that falls flat, but I'm not really going to try to only handicap that because I expect a couple to go with me and a couple to go against me, and I'm probably going to waste time trying to figure it out rather than just sticking to the numbers and finding matchups that work given the shot profiles.
Yeah, we have one spot that we both heavily agree on, so that should be fun. Little tease there for our audience to get to later in the show. Also, nothing against our podcast audio-only audience because they're fantastic as always, but the YouTube crowd, Justin, continues to bug me because on one side you have okay, where are the bets? On the other side you get, well, why are you talking to Paul Providence even though the bet wins?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I get it. Look, I get it. People like picks on good games. They don't want to watch bad games, even if it's like a slog to win the bet. And I think the difference between maybe me and that person is I have too many bets down to watch every game. And so they all feel the same, right? I'll tune into the last 3 minutes of 20 bets and I get to basically have red zone on for the entire night. And it's awesome. I love the way I bet because a lot of people don't do it. It takes a lot of fortitude. You definitely have to stare down the barrel in a lot of spots and play DePaul, who won outright, should I add. That wasn't
as
just
a 7.5 point dog.
7.5 point dog. All you had to do was listen. So look, I get it. I understand people who want to watch the big games and have the bets on the big games don't love that. And there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. I just think you're probably passing up on winning in exchange for betting on the games you want to watch, because the games you want to watch have more liquidity because more people want to bet on them. There are more bets down. That means a sharper number. And it just means long-term you're going to lose. You're going to lose to the VIG. You're going to flip a coin. You're going to go 50-50 because the number is that good. And that's why I tend to do better on low major, mid-major games. It's why I tend to avoid high majors unless I have a huge edge on a team for a whole season, like going against Texas A&M, betting on Vanderbilt, trusting Missouri when they were underperforming, betting on Wisconsin. Like that's the type of thing that you can really find. But to say, oh, I really need to bet on Auburn, Alabama because I need to get a bet down. Sure, maybe it's just whenever Alabama plays, you go over and you just do that. Fine. I admit there are angles. But I think when you want to really model the game and try to get games correct at scale, it's definitely you have to play the mid and low majors. And some people look. That's why there's lots of styles to bet. That's why you can play whatever you want. We're not making you press the button on your phone. We're not forcing you to go to the casino. You can do what you want. I think the fun of it with those mid-major and high-major games, you can kind of just have fun with it and expect to probably go 50% and just lose the VIG. And if you're ready for that, you'll have a great time.
just to wrap up the mid-major conference tournament conversation before we get to Saturday's action, or at least set action, because
I love that they have to
Madness,
listen to that, though. I'm sorry to interrupt. I love that they now have to listen to that to get to the bets. Maybe they're just smart enough to flip through to the things because you can just segment it. But all right, I digress. Enjoy the show.
In the Horizon League tournament, Justin mentioned that he has a long shot bet on Youngstown State at Caesar Sportsbook plus 460 if you want to get done on that. The fun thing about that tournament and the Barbasol Horizon League tournament, it's segmented, as you alluded to, in a different sense. So it's not consecutive days like the Mo Valley Arch Madness tournament. You have a shot for a long shot, or plus 650 that you got down on the Penguins, to have a little break in between their games and get set for the semifinal against Cleveland State, which definitely pays dividends versus a long shot in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament playing 4 straight days.
They reseed that one, right? That's why they took the break? Yeah. Nice. It's a cool tournament. I think you should reseed. I think that does give you reason to play hard in the regular season, because then all of a sudden you're a 7 going against an 8 because both teams upset. I like it. Definitely makes it tougher for those long shots, but I think this Youngstown team has honestly just really solid talent, good coaching, and sometimes those intangibles in the smaller conferences can be more than enough. I mean, we have them rated lower in shot quality, which is interesting because, again, sometimes you just have teams that kind of break the mold in a way that can do so, and we're going to talk about a couple of those teams potentially later.
Yeah, and one last note here, Arch Madness, I'll likely be betting Northern Iowa if they face Bradley as a short dog, I would say, on the open. I think UNI is going to get hit. Would you agree? Like, quick synopsis on that matchup, potential semifinal game in the MVC tournament. We're both low on Bradley. We touched on that on the last Beat the Closing Number episode. If they get there, if both teams get there.
Yeah. I think for me, it's really not much of a question. Bradley, they're just not analytically sound. I think you can expect them to be kind of up and down. It's just the profile does not really fit for
high variance
tournaments. Right. It just doesn't fit for winning tournaments. They could definitely get 2 games in a row, but they could also, by the time they get to the final game, or even a semi, they could look terrible. And you'd be like, wait, how did this team get here? And then, if they were to play another game, they could look great. It's just kind of been how they are all season. And also, very strong home team, not exactly going to trust them on the road. I think they could. I think it could be Murray. So we'll see how that goes. It's only a 4.5 point line there tonight.
So without further ado, Duke UNC, one of the best rivalries in sports, tipping off the Saturday matchups that we're handicapping here on Beat the Closing Number. KenPom makes this game Duke minus 11 as we record here on Friday morning. No odds out quite yet. UNC smack dab on the tournament bubble, not just for the sake of Joe Lunardi's projected bracket, but also FanDuel has UNC right around minus 125 to make the NCAA tournament. I have all the latest bracketology odds up over at thelines.com. Despite the fact, Justin, that UNC during this 6-game winning streak, heading into the Duke matchup, trying to get into the March Madness field, shooting 47.8% during this stretch, their opponent shooting 33.8%. So how likely is that to continue against Duke in the rematch, where Duke covered as a 13.5-point favorite? You could say, okay, why is the market only adjusted 2 points, where it's not like these teams are playing on a neutral, they're playing in the Dean Dome? Well, Duke has continued to outproduce the market's expectations, and a big reason why, they're playing 5-out basketball in a big way. 45.5% of Duke's field goal attempts have come from behind the arc. That's just outside the top 50 nationally, so that may not really strike much interest statistically. But if you look over the 3-point attempt rate over the last 3 years for Duke under John Shire, it's an increase of about 8%, right smack dab on 8% in terms of 3-point attempt rate over the last season. So Duke has really transformed offensively. Isaiah Evans, their stud freshman, has come along as well in a big way. He's been a microwave scorer, not to use a cliche, off the bench. Cooper Flagg has been a stud at both ends of the court. They blitzed Wake Forest on Monday night. I believe that's 6 straight covers, or at least 5 for the Blue Devils. So how do you handicap a game where Duke as we touched on before we got started here on the podcast, wants to hang the ACC regular season title banner, and UNC playing for a ton at home in a revenge spot rematch.
I mean, tough one to figure out, right? Duke team's good. It's interesting, the expected probabilities to win and lose games essentially pile up to lead to a shot quality record with 4 losses, but only one game the entire year dipped below the 50% mark to have a distinct loss. So one distinct expected loss, 4 aggregate expected losses. And that's not very different from the 27-3 that they are to be 26-4. They are dominant. I don't bet a lot of Duke games, Eli. I don't, because this is a hard team to bet. I mean, it's what I talked about in my 3-minute mini TED at the top of the show. It's like, this is one of the toughest teams to get a fair shake on from the book. And I mean, that I was smiling while you were looking while you were talking, because I was looking at the page on Shot Quality Bets for their stats. 4th in spacing, 6th in 3-point shooting, 8th in fewest shots attacking the rim allowed, 8th good passing, 13th efficient in transition, 16th defensive rebounding, and 16th in low turnover rate. So where are you going to go? What are you going to do? How are you going to stop? It really is more like, what do they want to do? This is are they playing with their food in their biggest rivalry in their best year and with one of their best players in a long time, which is crazy because I'm still watching Zion Williamson throw down insane dunks at the NBA level to this day, and the impact in the league is still being felt from all those guys. And Flag's next. That is just true. He is neck and neck with Broome, who is 4 or 5 years his senior, competing in the same realm, and we'll see how they stack up come tournament time in just 2 weeks. But I'm inclined to say you want to continue to take Duke, and they're having this historic season. I think they have every reason to just continue to do it. I don't really think it's that difficult for them. Not in this ACC. I don't think they've had to really put their foot down. I mean, North Carolina certainly has not. Look at the games on this win streak. You want to call it a win streak? It's a gift streak. It's Christmas time in Chapel Hill. Virginia Tech, Miami, Florida, Florida State, Virginia, NC State, Syracuse, and Pittsburgh are the games outside of Clemson and Duke they've played since February began. I would hope they only lost Clemson and Duke, or else something's very wrong, and they would have no business sniffing the tournament. Thank goodness they made good on the back half, the easy back half here that they were gifted after losing to Stanford, who is good, by the way, not too bad of a loss, but should have probably beat Pittsburgh on the road if they were that good. And yeah, the Duke losses don't look great. But also losing to Louisville, okay, losing to Florida, all right, losing to Alabama, Michigan State, Auburn, Kansas maybe doesn't look great right now, but that was early in the season. But I don't hate their resume. I know the numbers are going to tell me to take North Carolina. I know they are. We've been high on them the entire time. We've been betting on them the entire way here because we weren't down on them to begin with. So, yeah, I think you stick with it. I think you get a game that stays within double digits because North Carolina, like I hate to say it, needs it, but they're going to play the full 40. I don't know what Duke's going to do. I think the win is more than enough for the Blue Devils here. And who knows? Maybe the crazy thing happens and they pull it together in the last game of the season, Saturday, rivalry game, everything about done. So what makes this so interesting with the schedule is this was either going to be the biggest game of the season or it wasn't going to matter. And the teams are going to have to come in and figure out who wants to play for what. And I don't know. I don't think Duke wants to give North Carolina an easy win and a credit to their resume. I think they would like to blow them out, but you got to think it's going to be jumping. They need to do everything they can, I think. And I like taking the points in college basketball games to begin with. So I would imagine people like Duke. I'll take some North Carolina. I'll do it. We'll see. I don't know. Is the number out yet?
Nothing out yet. KenPom 11. I would assume it's going to be taxed a little bit more than that. So
I'd
maybe
take 9.5. I think 9.5 is probably
yeah.
about the lowest I'd go. If it's 9, if it's 8.5, I don't want anything to really do with it. The shot quality bets model projection is usually a little low on Duke, which is a little alarming, but we have this one at one full possession at 3 points. So I'm not that aggressive. I'd probably put it like 7.5, 6.5, but I have to run my numbers. But again, the home court late in the season, we'll see. We'll see. It depends. It really depends how Duke wants to play it. It's such a unique team. It's hard. It's a hard team to bet.
Go back to the first meeting. Duke got off to a huge start off of UNC's turnovers. Tar Heels racked up 14 overall in the game. Duke scoring 19 points off of those miscues and 1.56 points per possession in the low post. We touched on that from the beginning of the season. Yeah. UNC's interior defense is very vulnerable, not only against Duke, but against, across the country. Maluach, Flag should have a big game. Also, I hinted at this from the get-go of this handicap. Flag's defensive numbers are absurd. 2.9 defensive win shares. That's tied for first in the nation, most by any ACC player since 2017. 7.1 defensive BPM, 87 defensive rating, 4.52 DBPR, which is per our guy Evan Mia, and 82 stocks on the season. So that's blocks plus steals, which is second in the ACC. Also touched on this from the beginning of the handicap. Will UNC's three-point shooting differential continue to a degree? 14 percentage points is a lot. And like you said, who have they played? Who have they played defensively? No team they faced during this 6-game
who has that
breaks.
rim protection? I mean, that Cooper Flag has. No one.
Right. And Maluach, for that matter.
Sure. Right. Well, I mean, definitely not in the ACC.
Right.
It could definitely get ugly. It could. This is a wide distribution of possible results. That's all I feel.
And so for that reason, you're going to take the points as long as it's in that maybe 9 to 11 range.
Yeah, as long as essentially I'm like, I do think there are some key numbers in college, 9.5, 6.5, 3.5, just getting the possession lines, just because, that's how it kind of works with finishing a game. In terms of, okay, get it over this line, because it changes your game result. It changes the way the plays are kind of done when you have a game surpassing those lines. It leads to different strategical adjustments. So they are key numbers. And I don't know. I haven't really studied that. I would imagine it's replicated, but like when I can get a 9.5, I usually give it a little bit more value than like, wow, getting a 10.5 over a 10, or an 8.5 to 9.5. I'm a little bit more excited about than 7.5 to 8.5 for sure.
I may wait to bet this one live to see if I can get a little bit higher than what the close is. I mean, that's another conversation. Yeah. How does the market move in this? Maybe right on open, couple hours before tip? Does Duke get money? Wake Forest was bet down, mind you, on Monday night. Didn't matter. Duke won the game by 30 plus. One other note, injury-wise for this matchup, doesn't sound like Duke is going to get Malik Brown back. Just kind of reading between the lines on what Shire had to say, their best defensive player dealing with that shoulder injury. He said he would have to be 100% right or close to it for him to play. I don't see why you would rush him back. You need him healthy for the NCAA tournament. He means that much to Duke at the defensive end of the floor, despite the fact that we mentioned how good Duke's interior defense is with Maluach and Flag. But Justin likes UNC to a degree. I'll probably wait to bet this one live. Any last closing thoughts on the matchup before we move over to Alabama-Auburn?
I don't hate the late play, the live play on UNC. If you can get 18.5, if it goes bad early, and expect them to come back into it, I could see it going bad early. I can't. It's
definitely I would say a stronger likelihood than UNC being up double digits at half or up even a couple points at half.
Right. I think so. If in that vein, you probably should wait. So we'll see. And again, you want to make sure they're getting decent shots, and you want to make sure they can figure out a way to get something at the rim, or maybe the jump shooters are shooting well, and you can see it in the shot quality. So we'll see. This is a tough game to bet. I'll tell you that much. It's another one where, if you want the games at the top of the totem pole to bet it, just take your favorite team and go 50% lifetime and have fun and just pay the 10%, I guess. But I don't know. I think that your money's much better spent going having fun betting on a Drexel game, but that's just me.
That's why we love having Justin on the show. Brings a much different perspective than the average handicapper. But let's move on. Caveat to that statement, another big game, Alabama at Auburn. KenPom making this line, Auburn minus 10. Total projection-wise on KenPom, 176. Both teams coming off losses.
Oh,
Alabama dropping 2 games in a row. I want to give you credit off the top before we dive into the matchup. You mentioned taking Florida, not only total for that matchup at Alabama, but taking Florida plus money if you like the Gators versus taking the points, getting a little more value, bang for your buck. Definitely worked in those bettors' favor who listened to that advice. But Alabama dropping 2 straight, Auburn losing to A&M on Tuesday night. Had a big bet on the Aggies. That one came through. No Denver Jones. Auburn coming off of the clinching regular season title win last weekend. Buzz Williams has historically owned Bruce Pearl. That continued.
True.
He was calling out plays from the sideline that Auburn was running. It was fun to watch. Also, long-term, just with me for Auburn really quickly, they did a great job of not only trapping Broome, but making him think fast. That could be something to watch for. Not in this matchup specifically, but come the tournament. What happens when teams do exactly what A&M did, especially defensively sound teams like the Aggies? He had a couple turnovers. Auburn had 15 on the game. Granted, no Denver Jones, but still worth noting for me. Anyways, back to this matchup. Auburn, Alabama. Pissed off Auburn team, pissed off Alabama team. Any angle for you here, Justin?
Give me sorry.
Total?
No. My mouth didn't work. I think it's Alabama.
I
Auburn,
like that.
Yeah, Auburn kind of struggling a little. That Texas A&M game, their worst game of the season for shot quality, their lowest expected win percentage, reeks of complacency. And I don't think that's a bad thing. They've done it. They are the best team in the country. They are the number one. And yeah, going on the road, Texas A&M, the physicality is tough. The stuff we've talked about for a long time here. When I tell you go against A&M, go against A&M, because it doesn't work against everyone. When you can shoot over them, when you can figure it out, when you have other methods, when you can embarrass them in terms of their weaknesses. Well, guess what? It's a college basketball is a big game of rock, paper, scissors, right? And there's sometimes you're just the rock, and sometimes you're the paper, and sometimes you're the scissors, and just depends on your style. And obviously, in terms of Auburn being this rock that no one can handle, and Texas A&M being the paper that I think everyone's the scissors to, it just works, right? And all of a sudden, A&M gets this win and maybe exposes it. But now you have a game against Alabama where Auburn already played them, beat them on the road by 9 points in a game that shot quality expected Alabama to score an additional 20 points, 16 more points on three-pointers. Mark Sears underperformed by 12 points, one of his worst games of the season, Eli. So, reload, take the shot, use the data behind it. Alabama here on the road. It's a tough spot. But, I mean, they have the shooting to do it. I think if they take some notes maybe from what Texas A&M did, again, they've dropped, 4 of their last 6? This is a little bit more of a pissed-off Alabama that now I honestly believe has no recourse for any shot at the 1, is locked into the 2. So I don't know. This is maybe a little bit more for like pride and not wanting the season sweep. And it's tough. I think, is number out here yet, or where are we at with it? There was a number, right?
Yeah, no number. I would guess Auburn gets a little bit of tax on senior day coming off the A&M loss, maybe 10.5, 10. I don't see this being lower than 9.5. That's for sure.
Wow. Okay. We have 8, and we have 8 over at SQ. So that kind of lines up a little bit towards the Alabama. It's kind of what we're feeling. Again, Alabama offense expected to be doing better. Actually, was a little cold in the non-con shooting a little cold in the mid-range in conference play. And honestly, Broome has been impacting the mid-range a lot. And Auburn's been has been very lucky defending the three, expected to be allowing conference opponents to shoot 6% better from deep. So is this the game where the cows come home? And that type of three-point defense that shot quality sees in Auburn gets exposed? Because again, a 6-point difference in conference is going to change a few things in terms of how you perceive the number of points they allow per possession. And I mean, again, that's what they've done all season, though. Teams shooting 29% from deep against them this season, 28% from deep in conference, expected 34 in both. I don't know. That's not very sustainable. Maybe this is that day. Maybe Alabama finds the stroke coming off of a tough loss. I mean,
on their own senior day,
right? And I love the senior day loss, man, because family's there, emotions are high. It's hard. You don't realize that, like, a lot of these kids, their families don't come out to every single game. It's not exactly easy. You're not close to home. Oftentimes it's not easy for the family to get there, but it's senior day. It's arrangements are made long in advance. Parents are on the floor. I mean, we saw with Alabama, it didn't work. They tried to have their senior day after the game.
That was weird.
And it didn't work. And I think it's not really about, because he's like, I don't want the distraction. It's like, I don't think that's the distraction. I think having the family in town, in the stands, knowing they're there, it's a little bit different for whatever reason. I don't blame these kids. It's their whole lives, their whole careers culminating at this point. Only 4 or 5% go on to play pro ball. Like, it's very much the end of their basketball careers. They have poured the first 20, 15 cognizant years of their lives into for 80 hours a week, full-time jobs, children in the mines. They love the mines, and they're sad. They're sad they're leaving the mines, and their families are there, and they don't play well on the senior day. And on the opposite side, it's like this let's get them. It's like, all right, let's spoil it. And it works. For whatever reason, it works. It's the one time a year where I don't agree with that extra 1 point home court tax that has become the standard on top of HCA calculations from Ken Pom. Yeah, Alabama making me feel all right. I think if you can get, again, above that 6.5, maybe even that 9.5, we get 9.5 behind Alabama. I like it, because they're going to shoot those threes with 30 seconds left, and they don't care. They're going to do everything they can to make it as close as possible. They don't care. And maybe an over as well. We saw, 30 points in 2 minutes or something to end the Florida game? Jeez.
Ton of fouls to end that matchup. That was
a ton of fouls and a ton of threes, and they'll hit them. And it's just what a concept. Good shooters, finished games, free throws, clock stoppages, and points.
My one concern with this Alabama play just is, do we see a bit of a mirror in terms of the statistical output for Auburn on the offensive glass, like what Florida did? 16 offensive rebounds, out-rebounding Alabama by 15, 50-35. Condon had a huge game, 27-10. Florida shot below 30% from three, which Justin, if you go into that matchup and say Florida's going to shoot below 30%, I would argue you and I both would have had a bet on Alabama in that case. Yeah, they dominated the glass.
Did all of a sudden one of the arms of Alabama's defensive rebounders fall off, apparently? I would have liked to know that, too.
It's a good question.
I would have put a bet on Florida if you told me that. So, yeah. It's tough. But, yeah, I do think this is a spot where Broome could dominate a little bit and corral those offensive rebounds, especially if they're getting to the rim, right? Rebounding is such an art. It's a function of shot type as well, because the longer shot more generally creates the longer rebound. The lay-in with the English off the glass isn't going to Kareem 14 feet out beyond the paint, right? It's physics. So you give Broome a better chance to dominate the glass when the ball is going closer to him. So if they're getting to the rack, I expect those misses to get cleaned up at a better chance. But if they're taking jump shots, the box out's a little bit more effective, right? Because it's going to scatter the effectiveness of, keeping him in one position far, even under the basket. You can get your guards rebounding a little bit involved, or your wings especially.
I'll tell you this. If Denver Jones doesn't play, I mean, that you could correlate to why Mark Sears underperformed in a big way. Maybe Alabama was due for a little bit of 3-point variance heading into that first meeting against Auburn. But no Jones, Sears should perform much more efficiently, and I may be with you on the Tide in that case. But a game we're both on, Justin, likely betting come Saturday, St. John's at Marquette. KenPom makes this one Marquette -1. I'll likely lay the VIG. I expect a little bit more home tax on the Golden Eagles in this matchup. If Marquette wins the game, they won't be in the 4-5 matchup against likely Xavier in the first round of the Big East tournament starting next Wednesday. And what does St. John's have to play for? Absolutely nothing. I know that's a little cheesy. I'm sorry. But despite the fact that they've had a week off after the Seton Hall win last week, clinching the Big East regular season title outright, no Davion Smith, that being reported by John Rothstein on Friday morning. Smith sitting out with that shoulder injury. This means everything to Marquette after that first matchup, not only with the Big East tournament seeding at stake, but you go back to that first meeting, St. John's covers by 3, 21 offensive rebounds, or covers as a 3-point favorite, I should say. 15 missed free throws. You could argue they should have won by more than 6 or so points. Offensive rebounds, allowing offensive boards was a problem for Marquette against UConn on Wednesday night. They allowed the Huskies to corral 19 offensive boards. Marquette, the second worst defensive rebounding unit in Big East play, only trailing Seton Hall. What has happened to Cam Jones, shooting around 25% in Big East play, 15 points on 5 of 16 shooting, but 1 of 5 for 3 in that first meeting? You're coming off a game where Marquette shot 13.6% from deep, but on senior day, I think we get a little bit of positive 3-point variance for the Golden Eagles at home. Keep in mind, during this 5-game winning streak for the Johnnies, plus 9.6 net 3-point clip. I think that reverses a little bit in Marquette's direction. Cam Jones gets hot on senior day. Golden Eagles win the game outright.
Yeah, I'd imagine this is not a spot where St. John's is putting their players at risk, I think is the best way to say this. There's so much that this Johnny's team, this Red Storm team, wants to accomplish besides showing up on Fallon, I suppose, and singing sea shanties, which is crazy in of itself. What a season. What a season. It's great. It's great.
How happy were you watching that on a scale of 1 to 10?
I wouldn't say I enjoyed the actual thing. I liked it symbolically for what it means for New York and for the recruiting efforts of St. John's and the longevity of what Rick Pitino is building, and the fact that all of a sudden this is becoming something cool, and what St. John's looked like even last year with Pitino compared to this year, and being fueled by winning and the championship and the confetti at Madison Square Garden. When's the last time you saw confetti at Madison Square Garden?
All white.
I think white and red. White and red.
True.
Yeah, but it was great, and I was really excited. It was because it was the whiteout night, and Rick Pitino was in the white suit for it to beat Seton Hall to secure the single title name. But now, I think they probably want to win the tournament, but I don't know. Do they want to win the Big East tournament is what I'm saying. Obviously, March Madness on their minds. They don't really need to have the greatest run, but I do think they're going to view it as a tune-up. I don't think Rick Pitino, he cares what happens in those games. I think if he loses in the first round, he tunes the guys up, they get rest, they get healthy. Smith maybe doesn't even play in the Big East tournament. That wouldn't surprise me at all, honestly.
I'm with you.
I think they just say, all right, you guys want to go out there, we run, and maybe if we don't shoot hot and we lose, and RJ turns an ankle and misses a week, it's not worth it. So I don't know. I think we probably see this being a little bit of a jog it out type of game. Maybe jump shooting, not too many attempts at the rim for RJ. who's maybe been a little beat up. We know Kadari Richmond dealing with double groin strains throughout most of the season, playing through, injured, not caring. Wouldn't be shocked to see him not really going full speed. I don't think that stuff's in the numbers. I don't. So give me Marquette. Give me the day off for St. John's. They've earned it, and it would take that 9-point shooting 3-point differential in their favor again, essentially, for them to go in. And I'm guessing this is going to be like a one possession line, and they're going to play it tough. They're not going to mess around. It's not just going to be a joke, but I could definitely see, it would have to essentially be a big Sim Wilcher game, in my opinion, because I don't really see anyone else who's taking the step up or who really has the reason to. Wilcher, of course, I love his gamesmanship. He's like every minute he's just hungry. Like he knows he's like the man on the bench right now, sixth man. He's great, but like he's fighting for that spot on this team next season to show Rick Pitino he's the guy who's going to start when they lose Scott, when they lose Kadari. So it's going to be interesting, and when they lose Smith too. So like all three of those guys are going, and I think Wilcher is assumed heir to Smith's spot right now. So I expect him to be hungry. I expect a good game out of him, toe-to-toe with Cam Jones. You like a points prop? Give me some Sim Wilcher into the starting lineup, taking shots over those other guys who maybe are a little bit more banged up. But yeah, I expect Marquette to get the win. Maybe money line if you're a little scared, but if anything, man, 11-point blowout. Like, who cares?
Alt line, yeah. If you don't wanna lay the vig like I likely will be doing, yeah, I agree with you.
Well, you're still
laying
the vig. You're paying the probably a higher hold on the alt, but your return on investment in retaliation for that can be a lot better for the same game, for getting it even more correct. And you could again ladder Kelly, however you want to play around with it. But I do like some of those alts for a decent sprinkle backed up maybe with a little heavier bet on the money line. Shocked if Marquette loses this. If they lose this game, if St. John's comes out and does this, I mean, is Marquette on the bubble? Like what happens? Are they already? Is it all? I don't even. That's a.
They're fine.
They're fine, right? It's
they're
just
fine.
bad. It's just,
but if
it
you
could hurt them.
But if you look at the Big East tournament, they could face Xavier in the first round and be one and done, and then what do you do with their?
Obviously they're fine. My apologies. Some people have them. Yeah, they're pretty locked in. But I mean, if they struggle, could they fall a little more? Could they end up playing?
Yeah.
They end up the difference in the 11 seeds right now is playing VCU if you're at the bottom of the 6 line, or it's playing Indiana, Oklahoma if you're at the top. So you better hustle. That's just pretty stark difference. VCU, you don't want to get VCU. You don't want to get San Diego State. Those are the 11s right now at the top of the 11 line. You want this win. You want to maybe even try to push for the 5 if you're Marquette. I'm sorry, I said it's been so bad recently. I mean, and the Big East is weak, so I'm shocked. The bracket matrix giving him a lot of credit. No one really down on him. A couple 7s, I guess. Sure. Which I think is maybe a little more fair. I might have them as a 7. If they lose this game, I think they start to look like a 7 for sure.
Yeah, if they lose their next 2, I'm in agreement with you there. I will say, I know I harped on Cam Jones and his poor efficiency in Big East play, but you look at a couple key metrics, bias in performance rating and regularized adjusted plus minus among the Cousy Award finalists. So the best point guards in college basketball is Zakai Ziegler, Braden Smith, Mark Sears, who we touched on earlier, Walter Clayton Jr. of Florida. Gators looking more and more like a number 1 seed. Jones leads all those point guards in RA, PM, and BPR. Yep. He has been that good despite the fact that he has not shot the ball well from 3. I think you get a monster performance from him at home, especially without Davion Smith for St. John's, and Marquette maybe wins this game and maybe get a little value on the alt line. Yeah. But I'll be taking money line. I think I would assume this line is going to open around -2, so maybe you get a -125.
Pitino is a strategist. He is a strategist. Let me tell you, that man, if you've been watching the Vice series, he's a gamer. And that is why he has been winning and creating insanely competent defenses for decades. He just is obsessed. So I would imagine he looks at this and sees the rest potential as more beneficial to what he's building than getting this win. They've done what they needed to do. They won the championship. They got the pictures. They got the confetti. They went on the shows. They're going to rest up. They got the Big East tournament. They're going to pack Madison Square Garden. It's going to be the most read in MSG in the Big East tournament in the last 20 years. I mean, it's crazy. People in New York are going to buy tickets. Prices are going to be higher. UConn fans are already dejected. They're going to try to come out. We'll see how the draw goes. But, I mean, that might – I hope Pitino wants that win too, because they should cap it off, because you want to know what? Vast likelihood is you're not winning March Madness. Duke is nearing a 40 on Ken Palm adjusted EM. You're not beating that. You're just not. Maybe Auburn is. Maybe Duke falters. Maybe Cooper Flagg gets caught in a tornado. I don't know. That's what it's going to take. He could probably walk through it. He's like 6'8", 285 pounds at 19 years old. He'd be fine. Yeah, I think they're going to go hard for the Big East tournament. I think they want to raise every banner they can. They want to build the legacy. They want to own the Big East. And then the tournament, it might end up being ancillary in a sense. So we'll see.
A few more games to get to. Houston, Baylor, Ohio State, Indiana, and Stanford, Louisville. Let's tip things off with Houston, Baylor. Another game that doesn't have a whole lot of meaning for the Cougars, despite the fact that they're in contention for a 1 seed come the tournament. I would say they're a pretty near lock in that sense. Houston won, covered against Baylor in their first matchup. That one coming without Josh Ojungwana in the lineup. That's when Baylor really had to shift to that true small ball lineup with Omier at the 5. I mentioned Baylor winning the Big 12 regular season title, won on senior night despite failing to cover against Kansas. Baylor not on the bubble per se, but projected as a 10 seed, and they could potentially leapfrog Kansas in the Big 12 tournament seeding. Kansas penciled in as a 6 right now, depending on what happens in Arizona at Fog Allen on Saturday afternoon.
6?
Edgecombe really struggled. I know you're a big VJ Edgecombe fan, but really struggled against Houston's ball pressure in that first matchup. 5 turnovers, 15 as a team for Baylor. Anything for you on this matchup? Probably stay away from me.
We're still putting Kansas at a 6 right now?
6 in the Big 12 tournament, and probably a 6 in the NC2As, yeah.
I think it's 7 right now, maybe flirting with 8. Baylor, though, not doing well. I've been a big Baylor fan. Whenever I give up, Eli, teams make me regret giving up. I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on Scott Drew and the Baylor Bears and the talent on this team. I think you take them here against Houston. I think you bet on them. I think you expect them to win this game. It is what's the difference between this and Marquette?
Matchup wise, I guess.
Sure. I mean,
I'm a little more
Like,
concerned.
if you're saying, I mean, Houston has it locked up. They've done it. They're on the road. Baylor needs
situationally. Yes.
Baylor's dying, but they're playing well. So I don't even care about the situational stuff. What I care about is Baylor's playing well, but they're missing, and it's frustrating. It can happen for a whole season. And then guess what? The talent-heavy teams. And I just saw you talked about our good friend Evan Mia. He just tweeted yesterday. Comparing talent expectations to performance. And Baylor, UConn, Gonzaga, some of the teams that are doing the worst. Guess what? You go look at the sports books, those teams compared to teams that have equal resumes, equal records, equal results, those 3 teams with the talent priced better, because the bookmakers understand that the talent, we revert a lot back to our preseason ratings when we get into the tournament. They rear their ugly head, and the teams with the talent can just take over. VJ Edgecombe could literally just take over a game, and there probably are only 2 or 3 players in the entire NCAA who could compete against him if you give him the ball and just clear out. I mean, that's not how the game works, obviously, if it were to work that way. But, like, if you could just go one-on-one, I would take VJ Edgecombe.
Isolation scoring does come into play down the stretch.
Of course.
I'll give you that.
But what I'm saying is, like, if guys can fully take over, right? VJ could be blocking shots, stealing the ball on one side, dishing, passing, swishing, dunking on the other, very easily leading to cataclysmic runs against anyone. And so that's the type of value that they bring. And then on top of that, all you need is Jeremy Roach to not play like trash and hit a couple threes, and they can beat probably anybody, because Omier inside is a massive, formidable force to combine with VJ on the wing. You can hear it. People are excited. They can beat anyone. They can beat anyone. And they could also lose to anyone.
5-point line, so you're taking the points.
I'm taking the points. I'm considering the money line. And again, I think it's alt season. If you like Baylor, what's to say you're not taking a -2.5? They should, if they're going to win. Sure. Yes, maybe Houston hits that last second shot, but it has to be that last second shot into not fouling if they're trying to win, because then why are they taking the last second shot? I don't know. But we'll see. I definitely like Baylor. I expect to put some money down on them tonight.
Let's keep it moving. Couple more games. Ohio State at Indiana. This one having major NCAA tournament implications. KenPom makes this game IU -1. I'll likely be on the Hoosiers at home. When I say implications, Big Ten tournament winner would potentially face Oregon in the Big Ten tournament, and then the loser would have to maybe win a couple games to get in to the NCAA or to the NC2As. First time around in mid-January when these two teams squared off. No Malik Renew, no Devin Royal. IU won in Columbus as a 7-point road dog. Indiana in that matchup, 1.00 points per possession on post-up touches, 1.28 points per possession on pick-and-roll action, and shot over 65% at the rim. Ballo had a huge game without Renew. So did Mbako off of some high-low action with Ballo, too, for that matter. And over the last 10 games for Ohio State, they're allowing opponents to shoot over 68% at the rim. That in the 7th percentile per CBB analytics. I think IU dominates at the rim again. The question is, does Ohio State have a lot of success against IU's drop coverage? But Indiana's lineup change, man, I know I joked about this a couple episodes ago. Does Indiana fit that mold of a team that could go on a late season run? They're playing like a team with no pressure. They're playing like a team that is rejuvenated off of the lineup change with either Ballo or Renew coming off the bench. You're playing 4 out, 1 in. They're semi-dangerous if they get in. I know that sounds crazy, but at home, senior day, what say you for this matchup in particular?
Tough one. I think Indiana probably gets a win, but I don't feel great about it. Close game.
Tough handicap.
Close game, probably. And they haven't really been playing a lot of them, which is surprising for Indiana. I guess their losses have been closer than their home wins. They've been losing a lot. They had a tough run. They put together, 4 of their last 6 have been wins. After and before that, they had lost 5, 6, 7 of their 8 previous. So, this is...
But it correlates with the lineup change for Woodson and maybe just pressure off.
Sure. And then also, it went so badly that they could just kind of start playing free. There's nothing really matters anymore. They win a big home game against Purdue. They beat Michigan State on the road, which is crazy. I think this is a good spot. This is a pretty good spot. They bring that chair out. Indiana brings that Bobby Knight chair out. You slam it. But in terms of what they're able to do in the conference, the defense in the half court is pretty good. And I think, they're expected to be, I guess, they're kind of overperforming expectations in conference play. So it's a little tough, but so is Ohio State. So I don't want anything to do with this one, honestly. I would arguably say the best bet is to pass.
Yeah, there's no lack of motivation for either team. Yeah. So it's not like a Houston Baylor or a Marquette St. John's. Both teams, either team would clinch a bid with a win in the Big Dance, and the other would be playing on Wednesday of the Big Ten tournament, which is not what either team wants to do, especially needing a couple wins then to get into March Madness most likely. But last game to handicap here, Justin, Stanford at Louisville. first meeting in their regular season finale for both teams. KenPom has Louisville minus 13, projected total of 147.5. Maxime Renault has gone over or averaged over 22 points per game over his last 4, and he could give the Cardinals a little bit of fits with their 5-out offense. Per shot quality, Louisville allowing just over 31% from 3, and it should be closer to 34%. And one last angle here, just to circle back to the first game we touched on in the ACC with Duke UNC. If Louisville loses, if Duke loses, Clemson 25-1 to win the ACC regular season title on FanDuel. If Clemson wins against Vatek and the other two lose, they would win the ACC regular season title by default because of their victory over Duke, and that price would come through at 25-1. So it all comes down to one day to win the ACC regular season championship, and Duke losing to UNC would kind of start the chaos. But are you pulling a joker here? Would you maybe give Stanford a shot to cover, or even on the money line, or you like anything but the total? What say you?
I'm a Stanford tree fan, baby. I've been on them a lot this season. Transition defense is phenomenal. Keep opponents in the half court, defend that well too. Offense sure has some problems, but the shot profile is smart. A lot of threes. They struggle getting to the rim, but again, that's because they're not talent superior. They do rely a little bit on their shot making. Their shot selection could be better, but defensively, they definitely don't let you take good shots. So I like that a lot, and I think that type of shot selection defense is the perfect remedy for the shot selection offense that Louisville is absolutely making a name for themselves this year with Pat Kelsey, Coach of the Year in the ACC. It's all but decided. It has been awesome. I've made a lot of money. I can't believe they're back to 100-1 to win it all. I guess people are a little bit cooler on the recent results here because they didn't absolutely dominate against Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh. Didn't look great against Florida State. I get it, but I also don't really mind if that's their low point. The shot quality still looks pretty good. Expected to lose to California, though, so maybe a little hot there in that game. Might not bring that same heat into this final game of the regular season. And like I said, rely a lot on both shot making and shot selection. So if you take the shot selection away, though, what happens? It'll be interesting to see because they aren't exactly great at taking open threes. They have good rim and three rate, but that's what Stanford should be able to mess up. So what happens when you send a team that is 306th in the mid-range into the mid-range more? Yes, they've done well when they do get into those shots because they mean to take them. But what happens when there's shots they don't really want to be taking? Not too many people have been forcing Louisville to take shots they don't want to take. And I think Stanford could do that. They should have every reason to be playing to the final whistle in their first season in their new conference. They're not really going dancing, but they're still, I think, 19-11. I mean, get that 20th win if you can. I don't know that they do that, but they'll push. I trust them. They've been a very good team to bet on, and I expect them to lose, but lose this with dignity, probably 5-7 points rather than 13.
That's going to do it here for us on Beat the Closing Number. Remember to head over to play.thelines.com if you don't want to put anything down, you want to win some money. College basketball contests are free to win gift cards over at play.thelines.com. Also check out our free Discord channel for all of our staff bets. The link is at thelines.com in the top right-hand corner. You can also check out the best sportsbook promos at thelines.com. Give the video a thumbs up as well. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your favorite podcast if you enjoy the content. Justin, any last words before we get out of here?
Not really. I think take your shots in these conference tournaments. Try to pinpoint a team that you think is overrated and then play that side of the bracket. That's how I did it. That's how I like to do it. Find I think I went against Bradley and I went against Milwaukee as my first two angles. And I just sort of bet accordingly. And I got one to fall, and I'll probably win a little money or at least be able to get some decent value out of that bet at the worst. Maybe Bradley bows out early today too, and I'll be jumping for joy. So we'll see how that goes. A lot of great basketball ahead. Honestly, next week's the best week there is. I know March Madness is awesome. And yes, Thursday, Friday, in 2 weeks from now are the best 2 days, but the full week of Champ Week is just a full 7 to 8 day onslaught starting now. So let's go. A great 9 days until Selection Sunday.
Tentative plan for us, without discussing it with Justin quite yet, is a late Monday episode discussing conference tournaments, the high major action, everything, including the A10, and then maybe a Friday episode handicapping Friday night matchups. A little tricky. Can't really do a Friday episode to handicap next Saturday matchups because they won't be out yet. So rough plan for us next week. Hope you enjoyed the episode. For Justin and for myself, Eli Hershkovich, thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Beat the Closing Number. So long, everybody, and good luck with your college basketball bets.